VeeFam, what's up? Welcome back. My name is Mr. Messer, but you can call me Rob, and I am so pumped to have the one, the only former Team Gary V, former head of community for VeeFriends, former social for Cool Cats, the current head of social for Claynosaurs, the one, the only Mr. Zain Gaziani. Zain, thank you so much for being here. How are you, my friend?
Thanks for having me, Rob. Dude, what an intro. I appreciate it. I'm fired up.
So pumped, so pumped. In my mind, this has been a long time coming. I know I finally got to jam with you. Obviously, I've seen the one of the most viral Gary V clips, one of the most beloved Gary V clips out there. That obviously hit my radar a long time ago. Saw your name all over the place in the early days of V Friends, but it was nice to finally meet you in Indy, and you've obviously been on my radar for this, so this is a really special treat for me, and I think it's gonna be a really special treat for the audience to hear it from the horse's mouth, what it was like, especially of you have a very seasoned background, so really appreciate you taking the time to get into it. But
Thanks,
before we
man.
do that, I'd love to just take a step back. If you could give us like the 55-second cliff notes on who Zain is prior to ever hearing the name Gary V.
Let's go. Yeah, so let's see. Before Gary, man, that's it's been a minute, but let's see. I originally grew up in Dallas, Texas, so that's home to me. Went to school there, went to college there, and growing up, I was very bad at school. I was horrible at school. And what I realized as I got older is just, there's only a few topics I'm really interested in. I'm very good at learning those, and everything else doesn't matter to me. And so I was really bad at school, but I was really involved in all the extracurricular stuff, thankfully. So in college, I was, super involved in my fraternity. I was a recruiting chair for 2 years. I was the head of my student activities board in my college. I eventually became the homecoming king. So I was like the guy on campus, but I was horrible at school. But thankfully, because of all those extracurricular, all those social things, I was able to kind of package that and market myself and get a job with Amazon right out of college because my grades definitely weren't going to do it. And so, anyways, I eventually, after college, spent about 5.5 years doing human resources and recruiting. So, definitely not creative, the opposite. And I did that for 5.5 years. I spent most of that time at Amazon. And long story short, kind of doing that for 5.5 years, towards the end there, around 2017, 2018, I was just super depressed. I would like take off work and just lay in bed all day. And while I was kind of in that phase, I spent a lot of time on YouTube. And during that time, I discovered Gary's videos, and things definitely got really interesting from there.
That's so interesting. I don't know if I've ever actually conversed with a homecoming king, so this is an extra big deal for me. Um,
It was a
so
very different part of my life.
HR, like I don't, no one's ever like come across my path and like just raved about their life as HR, and then the other part of my brain like thinks of Toby Flenderson from The Office, who's like obviously super depressed. Is it like was it very career driven? Were you just like feeling like almost like you were in school, like this is not for me, like I'm not really excelling at this?
Yeah,
Were
I
you
mean,
thinking a lot of that?
exactly, dude. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were some fun components of it, like the recruiting I really liked because I got to just talk to people all day. And there was some fun strategy behind it. I loved onboarding people. That was so much fun. So there were definitely some fun like people stuff to it. But then there was a lot of the other stuff where you had to fire people, do investigations, all that kind of more of the negative stuff that the company would make you do, and that was your job. And I just realized like I was like 26, 27 years old, and I was like, where's this headed? Like, where am I trying to be like the head of HR at Amazon? Is that the goal? And I just realized I looked around me and I saw, because at one point I was doing executive recruiting at Amazon, so it was all the higher ups. And I looked around, I was like, man, there is not a single person in this room that I want to be one day. But I don't even know where to go from here. Like, great, I don't want to do HR and recruiting, but that's all I've done in my career so far. So what do I even do? And it wasn't until I watched Gary's videos in like the 2016, 2017 time where stuff started click a little bit. And I can talk more about what that was. But yeah, it was like I felt hopeless and I felt stuck because I didn't know what else I would even do and how to even begin that process, if that makes sense.
I totally get it. So with that, obviously, spoiler alert, you end up going to a talk, getting a job for him. But prior to that, because like there's different levels of like getting into Gary and his content, and different things hit people differently depending on where they are in their respective journeys. But like, what were those things for you? Was it like you're young as fuck and like do what you want? like I'm curious what put you deeper into that, you know, Gary Vayner force field.
Yeah, the first video was, I don't know if it was the first video. The first video I remember watching that really hit and struck a chord that got me to binge all the old content was the Monday morning video that everyone knows
Mm.
about, where Gary's in front of a trash can, giving the most epic talk of all time. And I was like, yo, I feel this. I just like, I was like, this guy gets it. And what's cool about discovering a creator, a few years after they made content is now there's tons of awesome content to binge. And so that's what I did with Gary. I would just watch his keynotes. I would watch the daily V's. I was watching all sorts of stuff. And the more I'd watch him, I was like, dude, this guy gets it. And even though I don't agree with everything all the time, I see where he's coming from. And I feel like whoever this guy is, I just want to be around him. I just want to be his friend. I want to be part of this ecosystem of other people who like this guy because I think he's just really positive. And yeah, the stuff that really hit me the hardest at the time was like the one life stuff. Like you've got one life, you're young, make it count. And I was like, yeah, I feel stuck, but I need to do something with this one life. How do I get out of this mess?
And were you actively at any point in time prior to shooting your shot? Were you were you trying to get into other careers? Were you applying, looking for stuff?
Yeah, dude, it was so I when I was really depressed and I was doing HR towards the end of it, I was really depressed. I was like, okay, well, let me think about this tactfully. Like, how do I actually get out of this? And I look back at my whole life, I was like, dude, you're such a creative. You want to do creative stuff your whole life. I got in trouble for drawing all the time in class when I was a kid, and I would sell comic books at lunch in middle school. And I was like, dude, you're meant to do something in this field. I don't know what exactly. And so, dude, I started like actually I started taking like my own, like courses online. I went to like Udemy and bought like $10 courses, $20 courses on like I did like email marketing, I did social media marketing, I tried to teach myself Facebook ads. And then I would take that experience and try to package it. And I would hit up different people just to see if I could get like an internship as a marketing person. And I think it was like 27, 28. And like I just was either getting completely ghosted or I had a few people tell me like, no, you just don't have enough experience. But for whatever reason, it just never worked. And so I was definitely trying and then, it was like early 2018 where things really changed for me. And you might be already getting that question, but in like early 2018, I saw Gary launched a Facebook group called First in Line. And that's where things really changed. So I joined the First in Line Facebook group during this time. I was one of the early active members, and I just found myself engaging there all the time. And there was no strategy behind it. There was no like I wasn't trying to engage so I got something. I was just having fun. And I was engaging, and at some point, maybe a month in, the team Gary V, I remember Sinan and May posted a video that they were looking for voluntary like moderators to help manage this group. I applied, definitely didn't think I was going to get it because I had zero community experience, and somehow I got it. And I think it was because I was so active, and so that was like what really kicked things off. Because then, as a moderator for Gary's Facebook group, even though I wasn't really interacting with Gary very much, I was interacting with the team, especially May, who ended up becoming my boss. And dude, I was having so much fun. I was getting, it was free role, it was a voluntary role, but every day, I would the idea of getting to go home from a job I hated every day to work for free on this Facebook group was so exciting to me. I just loved it. And I remember vividly at one point being like, whatever this is, whatever this community manager role is, like, how do I get to do this for a living? And how do I make sure my actual full time job that's paying me to work 8 hours a day is even half this fun? And that's how I got into like figuring out, oh, okay, there's some other stuff out there. I don't have to be stuck in HR forever.
That's powerful. And there's definitely an energy that comes with that, like kind of like I don't know if a new lease on life is too strong of a term, but yeah, it's a great feeling. And for
Yeah.
those, I mean, we're talking, we're talking 6 7 years ago. What what was First in Line?
Yeah, first in line, it changed a lot, like what it was meant for, but really it was created to be a closed Facebook, well, not a closed Facebook, a Facebook group where people who are fans of Gary and that whole kind of ecosystem can go hang out and just get to connect with one another. So it was like less about Gary, like he was obviously around, he would jump in comments, he would post videos here and there, but it was more so about if you like Gary, this is the place where you hang out and meet other people who like Gary and have meetups and get to know each other and support each other and start companies together, do whatever you want together. And so that was like the thesis behind it was kind of like with VeeFriends now. It's like this is a community, you're a part of it, great. Like it's bigger than Gary.
It's
This is a place for you
the
guys to
home
connect
base.
and get to know each other. Yeah.
And where, because I was not in obviously for that era, even though I was consuming Gary. Were there like prizes or something? Like if somebody would like interact with the tweet and hashtag first in line, were there like surprise and delight things, or am I misunderstanding that from stories?
Yeah, so that's a little bit different. So yeah, we did have something called, I think it was like the first 60 seconds or first 30 seconds, something of that nature. But that was a little different, where basically if you had notifications on for Gary's, I think Twitter at one point, and then definitely Instagram, and if you were one of the first people that commented a certain hashtag in the first 30 seconds or in the first 60 seconds, you had a chance at winning a prize of some kind.
Got it.
But this was completely different. This was a Facebook community.
Amazing. So the, tell us, and I'll clip this up and contextualize it for people that may not know this. One of the all time, and it's not just me, my personal taste, but like there's content, like there's receipts, like one of people's all time favorite Gary clips features Zain, and I'll just the cliff notes. I'll let you dive in with any kind of contextual backstory you want, but the TLDR is that Zain goes to a Gary talk, shoots his shot for a job, and Gary gives it to him. He says, I think, would you move to New York?" He
Yeah.
said, "Yeah," and Gary says, "Let's do it," and like the crowd erupts, and then it's followed up a few months later with like Gary clipping at a Team Gary V clip with that clip, and then Gary's face, and then like you're in the office. It just totally epic, amazing. So like talk to us like you're in a dark place, you're reaching for everything, you're obviously gravitating towards this content and in that line of work, so I'd love to hear the backstory.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I'll go back a little bit because I think the context is important, because a lot of people see that clip and they're like, "Oh, this random dude showed up at a random place and this random event happened," and kind of did, but there was a little more to it. So, basically, yeah, like I mentioned, I was working for I was the moderator for Gary's Facebook group. Eventually, I became the lead moderator, and even though I wasn't getting paid anything, it was so much fun, and I was like, "This is it. I just want to be a community manager." Hopefully for Gary, but if not, for someone else. This is all I want to do. I've got to get out of this career in HR and recruiting. And randomly, at one point, about maybe 8, 9 months into doing this first line Facebook group, I saw Gary was going to be speaking near my home, and he was going to be like a keynote speaker during like a 3 day real estate event. So I looked at the tickets online. I'm like, whatever this is, I got to get in this real estate event so I could see Gary talk. I'm a big fan of his content. I've been doing this stuff with him with his Facebook group. And I looked at the tickets, and because it was a part of a 3 day real estate thing, I don't remember the exact price, but it was way out of my budget range. There was no way I could afford it. So I was like, well, I don't want this to be the reason. Like, the story's not going to end here. I can't let it end here. I can't let money
Mm.
get in the way. And so I reached out to May on Team Gary at the time, who I was working closely with on this Facebook group for last year. And I reached out to May. I said, May, Gary's speaking near me. Here's the event. Here's when he's speaking. Is there any way, like, I'll sit in the janitor's closet, I'll do whatever it takes, but I just want to be there. I just want to say hi to him. And she's like, yeah, I think we can make it happen. And May's awesome. About a week later, actually, sorry, about a day later, she circled back. Not only did she give me tickets to the event, she got me VIP tickets to the event. And so she hooked it up as kind of a thank you for working with Gary. And so then a few weeks later, finally, it's the day of the event. And it's taking place at a huge hotel in Texas. I go to the hotel. I have no idea when Gary's speaking at this event, so I go early. I go at like 7 a.m. and it looks like Gary's speaking at 3 p.m. So I've got all day to kill at this real estate event, and I'm just meeting people, having fun. I'm just gonna see where the day takes me. And my only goal going in this event was just to say hi to Gary. I just want to meet him IRL, maybe take a selfie if we're feeling crazy, and that's
Hmm.
it. And that was the goal. And so that was the ceiling for me at the time. And so I go to this event. I'm meeting people all day. Now it's 12 p.m. lunchtime, and I'm in the lobby of this hotel, and in walks Gary. And Gary doesn't have a videographer, he doesn't have a security guard, it's just Gary. And so I don't say anything, but I kind of like, in the least stalkerish way, kind of follow him a little bit. And he doesn't go very far. He goes to the ATM that's in the other side of the lobby, and he's like taking out cash for some reason. And so I roll as Gary's taking out this money for the ATM for some reason. I walk up to him. I introduce myself. I'm like, hey, I'm Zain. I'm actually a moderator for your Facebook group. I just want to say hi. Thanks for all the content. And he's like, of course, I'll see you at the keynote later. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait. And I got a selfie with him before he left. And I was like, that's it, dude. I met Gary. I got the selfie. this is it. The day does not get better. You won. You did what you came here for. And so eventually, 3 hours later, now it's the keynote time. Now Gary comes onto the stage. Everyone's excited. And the first thing Gary says when he comes onto the stage basically is, hey, look, I want to do a Q&A. I'm in the mood for a Q&A. If you want to ask me questions, there's 2 mics there. Go line up. And I see all these people rushing to line up behind these mics. And without even thinking, I do the same. I get behind one of the microphones. I'm like 6 people deep. And at this point, I don't know what I'm going to ask. I don't know what I'm going to say. I just know if I don't say something, I'm going to kick myself. And
Yeah.
so I'm just standing behind this microphone. People are getting their turns. Eventually, it gets to me, and I still don't know what I'm going to say. I'm a nervous wreck. I'm shaking, dude. And finally, it's my turn. And I walk up to the microphone. There's this white light hitting my face. The crowd is dead silent. And it's just me and Gary, pretty much. It is what it feels like. And I walk up to the microphone. I have no idea what I'm going to say. And as I walk up to it, you hear Gary go, hey, it was really good to see you at the ATM earlier. And I don't know, as soon as he said that, it felt like I was like, oh, there's no pressure. We're just friends. We're just hanging out. And so I just started talking. And, basically I told him, I kind of like reintroduced myself at first, like, hey, like, huge fan of your content. I'm a moderator for your Facebook group. I've done this, this, and this. And he jumped in. He said, oh, I was like, yeah, just want to thank you for all your content. He jumped in. He was like, no, like, you don't have to thank me. You don't owe me anything, but I appreciate it. And then I jumped in, and at one point I said something about like, most recently I had 5 roommates, and you were the reason I did that because you said something about saving money, and I did the math. I was like, this guy's right, and so I got 5 roommates, and here's how much money I saved up. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh my, and his eyes got really wide. He was like, yo, this, and he's like, kind of like, he's like, this guy, listened, and here's what's happened to him. He's like, I think all of you should do that. I think all of you should save money and think about money differently. And it was really good energy. And so at one point, as it's going on, I was like, man, I think I'm just going to put it out there that I want to eventually work for him. And I think he's just going to say, great, like hit me up in 5, 10 years. And so at the very end of this thing, which is where the clip begins that you talked about, he's like, I'm like, hey, look, Gary, my dream, like my ultimate dream is to be on Team Gary Vee doing community management. And before I could even get to the ask, he jumps in and he's like, do you want to move to New York? I say, yes. And he says, great, let's do it. And I was hired on the spot. And what's crazy is obviously that occurred. I emailed Gary that same night, because he told me to. And sure enough, that next morning there was an email from the team. The next week I had 2 calls with different team members, including Andy, who ended up being my boss. And a few months later, I was able to coordinate and move to New York City and join Team Gary Vee.
Amazing. Just an epic story and a great tale to like it said a lot, but like shoot your shot.
Yeah.
That pre-meeting though, that's amazing. And that just like when, you did all the right things, but like when preparation meets opportunity or whatever the quote is, like it just
It's
aligned for you. That's amazing.
Yeah, dude. And
Such
the one thing I'll say there is like, for me, it's always about like, and it's not just Gary related to that incident, but just in general, it's always like, what's the worst case scenario, right? It's like, so I always think of like the best case and the worst case. And for me, in this case, the best case scenario was I tell Gary, hey, this is what I want one day. He says, great, let's do it. He hires me and my life changes, which is actually what ended up happening. But the worst case there, it really wasn't that bad. Like the worst case in this scenario would have been I go up there, I say I want to work for him. He's like, great, good luck, hit me up in 10 years. And maybe some people in the crowd laugh at me, people I'm never going to see again. And then we move on. And if that's the worst case scenario, dude, you got to go for it. And that's how I feel about everything I do. It's like if I'm doing anything that feels kind of crazy, I always think to myself, okay, but like, what's the intent? What's the best case? What's the worst case? If the worst case doesn't like kill me or do any harm to me or anyone else, like I got to go for it because the best case could also equally occur, right? And so I always think about that all the time.
Such a great point. Thank you so much for calling that out. It's so true. So true. So you head to Team Gary. According to your LinkedIn, you hit community mod, you go up the ranks, community mod, community manager, platform strategy producer, senior platform strategy producer. You mentioned you were, working with Andy, working with May. What are some of your best memories professionally? Maybe some things you had your hands into. I think I read that you were in on Tea with Gary Vee, and maybe some other things. I'd love to just hear your couple of highlights from that era pre VeeFriends.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Team Gary was so much fun. I was there for I think like 2 years officially or close to it, but it felt like 8 years because it was always on. A couple things that stand out. I think one was when I joined, I was joined for community management, so I was on the Team Gary account, replying to people all day, 10 hours, 12 hours a day, compiling trends, all that kind of stuff. But at one point, right when COVID started, we were all working from home, and the guy who was running Gary's Instagram at the time, super smart guy, he left to go take on a new job. So now there was a vacancy on who's running Gary's Instagram. I never thought in a million years it was going to be me, because at the time Gary's Instagram was like the platform. I don't know how they see it now, but at the time, like, that was the content that was being made for Instagram for Gary at the time was then being repurposed for all these other platforms. So it was a big deal. And at the time, May and a gentleman named Jim, who was on the team, they were both the managers. They were like, and Andy, they were like, hey, we have a vacancy here. We need someone to run Gary's Instagram. We think you should do it just for a little bit. It's temporary. You could do it for like maybe a month. We'll find someone. We'll hire a professional to come in. And I was like, cool. Like, I'll figure it out. I don't know if I'm qualified. I'm kind of scared, but I'll see how it works. And dude, 2 weeks in, I loved it. I was having a blast. Felt like the most perfect role for me. And then at the same time, May, Jim recognized that as well. And they were like, hey, we were planning to hire someone. We were actually interviewing someone. We think you should just do this. And I was like, I think so too. And so that was a really special moment because it was something that I was deathly afraid of. I didn't think I was prepared for. But not only did I clearly deliver results, I also loved it. It was like as much as I loved doing the community management stuff, this thing was different. I would wake up fired up every day because I got to figure out what we're making, how we're making it, what it's going to do, and then how do we make sure it really gets viewers to stop scrolling and share it. And that was just such a fun challenge. And it also, that role was where I got really close with Gary, because even though the community stuff, I was close with him, I didn't feel like I was going in depth with him on a lot of stuff. And with Instagram, we had to be in communication. We had to talk about analytics. We had to talk about ideas, especially during COVID. And so it was just a really memorable experience getting to run Gary's Instagram for, I think, maybe 6-7 months.
So you would connect and jam and go over that stuff on a regular basis
Oh,
as
yeah.
the producer of that platform.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, think about, we had to also get really creative because, when we were in the office before COVID, getting the content, even though Gary was super busy, you would be able to kind of slot time, run into his office, get a quick clip, run out, edit it. But now it's COVID. And so the types of content we're recording is different. The way we're getting the footage is different. And also you have to be creative because, like, in the office, you can do a lot of little skits. You can do a lot of little funny things. You have like Gary's busy background that's really recognizable, that catches people's attention. But now in COVID, it's like I have to figure out what Gary's wearing, what the background is, how do we get the content, and the communication that's required there is all virtual. And so it's just like you have to be really strategic on even our communication on what types of content we need recorded so we get what we're trying to look for from Gary. And it was just a lot of like more strategy required, but it was so much fun because there was just a lot of problem solving to be had.
So where does your role with Tea with Gary Vee come in?
Uh, so yeah, we started a show, for those who don't know, called Tea with Gary Vee on Gary's YouTube as a response to COVID, because at the time there was just a lot of negativity. There was a lot of uncertainty in the world. And Gary's like, hey, I can't do a lot of stuff I'm normally doing. Let's do this show regularly on my YouTube. And so I was kind of Dustin's counterpart for Tea with Gary Vee. So what would end up happening is I was basically so Dustin was on the coordination side during the show. And I was behind the scenes getting people onto the show. So my job was twofold. My job was, well, really threefold. One, it was finding fans of Gary that would text Gary's number, 212-931-5731. And they would text their questions, right? So I would go through that and I'd say, oh, this is a really good question. We should get this person on the show. And I'd coordinate. I always let them know I'm not Gary. I'd say, hey, it's Zain from Gary's team. We want to get you on the show. And so I'd coordinate and get people on that are Gary's fans and Gary's community members. The second part is I would be like the middleman between getting people on Tea with Gary that are like, I'd say, like, I don't want to say celebrities is the right word, but like artists, musicians, athletes, some of the bigger people that would usually kick off the show. And so people at other parts of Vayner would connect me with them. I'd be on the text with them, with their management and their agents, and I'd get them on the show. So I was more on the guest production side. And then during the show, I would be noting down all the different moments that we thought were really great, because right after the show, because I was running Gary's Instagram, I would then start getting that into production. with my team. So it was getting people on the show and then post production immediately so we could start making micro clips to post that same night, or if not, definitely the day after.
And I'm just, obviously this is just a party of one speaking, but my favorite Gary content is when he's doing Q&A, when he's off the cuff,
Yeah,
like a Tea with Gary V, like a 4Ds doing a round table. Like that's my
same.
favorite because he's just so sharp. He's just so on it. Finishing other people's sentences right off the bat. Like it's just like he's just a wizard like that. So
Yeah.
so much great content came from that. And it was cool. Like you speaking like has me like back to that era. I think you guys started a thing. Maybe it was before, maybe it was a little
Mhm.
after. But when he would say something, uh, and it would clip to like a keynote that he did 5 years earlier,
Yeah.
and he was either regurgitating it or re-emphasizing it, or it was just kind of like a receipt essentially. Um, it was really, COVID did a lot of things, but I'm sure it was a huge challenge. But I think that was an amazing, amazing pivot that brought a lot of value to a ton of people. Like it was every day.
Yeah. It was regularly.
People are watching him like do his thing now on Twitch, uh, but
Yeah.
that's not like Gary every day. Like this was every morning for 3 hours or whatever it was, of just like positivity and direction and
Well,
advice to kick it off.
yeah, and you know what's really funny? I didn't recognize this till like pretty recently, but it's like whenever I hear people's like pandemic stories, obviously, a lot of people had uncertainty and all that kind of stuff. Like no one knew what was going to happen in the world. I know it sounds pretty messed up, but like I didn't really have as much of that, and I think it's because I was so busy working.
Right.
I didn't even have time to be like, what's happening in the world? I was like, oh shoot, we have tea with Gary Vee tomorrow. I have to get 10 guests ready, and then we are working on this video, and then I need to record another video, and then I need to produce this, and I was so busy. And then we had the All In Challenge. I don't know if you remember that, but we were like
Oh yeah,
raising
definitely.
money to feed the people that were impacted by COVID, and we were ended up raising like $60 million in like a month or two. I can't remember the exact timeline, but we had so much happening during this time that I didn't even have time to like think about the future. I was just so busy, stuck day to day. But it was awesome, man. I feel like me and so many other people on Team Gary Vee, we all kind of were forced to level up, and think really creatively and think differently about our content strategy, which ultimately I think led to a lot of interesting content for Gary.
Mm, so amazing. What a cool era. I know COVID was not the best for a lot of
Yeah.
reasons, but what a cool era. A lot happened with the sports cards, obviously All In Challenge I just forgot about. Um, and somewhere along the line he starts pivoting from screaming in his megaphone about sports cards to NFTs and CryptoPunks and Ethereum. Um, all that to be said, when take me to the first time that you remember hearing the word VeeFriends.
Oh man, that's a tough one. Okay, so I'll say I don't remember the exact time I heard VeeFriends, but I'll tell you this. So some context. I don't think I've ever even shared this. So it was like early 2021, and I had a call with Gary because it was during COVID. Excuse me, I should say. So it was during COVID. Obviously, everyone's still working from home. And at some point in early 2021, I left. Or sorry, sometime in 2020, excuse me, I left to New York City to go to Dallas, Texas, which is like home to me, which is where my family is. And so at one point, I called Gary in early 2021. I was like, "Hey, just I don't know why I feel like I need to tell you this, but I'm not." We were having a call, and I was like, "By the way, I'm not planning to move back to New York City because I just don't like the city. It's so expensive. It's so crazy." And he's like, "No, no, I get it." And so and I said that to him because eventually when we were going to have steady state again post COVID, like you need for Team Gary Vee at the time, you needed to be in New York City. And so I think he kind of took that, was like, okay, noted, like, got it. And Andy knew that as well. And so what was interesting is early 2021, Andy started like, he didn't say VeeFriends, he didn't say NFT, but he was kind of like, hey, Zain, you should get really familiar with Discord, or Zain, you should follow these 5 people that are speaking about Web3 on Twitter. And I was like, okay, cool, like, got it, cool. And I did. I got to get into that because Andy was telling me it was kind of like a homework assignment. And then
Mm,
eventually, at some point, I don't remember when I heard VeeFriends, but I knew Andy, D Rock, and a few people were in this place where Gary was drawing for a week straight, drawing all these characters, and I was getting screenshots from that from Andy and D Rock there, and they were sending me stuff. It's like, well, what are these characters? What are these? Like, who are these? I want to know more. And at some point when they got back from that trip, I think they had decided the name VeeFriends or something shortly after, and that's I don't know exactly where I heard it, but I knew at that point something interesting going on. I was like, how do I get involved? And Andy at one point was like, hey, so we're starting this thing called VeeFriends. It's all about NFTs and Web3, which is what you've been learning because I've been telling you about it. We're gonna go all in. We're gonna figure this out. Do you want to be a part of it? Do you want to leave Team Gary and be a part of starting this? And I said, of course. And that was probably in like February, maybe March of 2021, if I had to guess.
Wow. So like you're really thinking about it, you're in like the first, if you're first five employees there.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to, if I mean, I don't know the exact number, but yeah, I'm definitely
All
up.
right.
Yeah. It was like, if I had
You're
to
at the
guess,
table.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, if I was like employee number 4 or 5, I was the head of media and community. And so, it was a really interesting role because it was 2021 and no one, it was interesting because Gary has so many fans worldwide, but not a lot of them, including myself, knew much about crypto, anything about Web3 because we were all discovering it together. And so, that was interesting because I had to not only figure out how do we launch VeeFriends to the world, I had to also learn it and then figure out the strategy as I was learning it. It was really interesting.
So this is, where are we in 2021? This is like around New Year's?
Yeah, I'd say no, I'd say it's a little bit later, maybe around February, maybe early March of 2021 is when I was like, okay, there's this thing happening. I'm all in. I'm going to leave Team Gary and join Andy on whatever this is.
Got it.
Um, and then it was just a matter of figuring out what are we doing and then building out the go to market strategy for that. So when we did launch it on May of 2021, people were ready. All the people that did want to buy VeeFriends knew what to do. They had ETH, they had their wallet,
Mm,
they knew how to mint, they knew what was happening. And so there was just a lot of like it was interesting because there was a lot of like educational stuff, right? We were writing blog articles about what is ETH, what is MetaMask, what's a wallet, what are VeeFriends, and then we hosted office hours. We were doing all the educational stuff was the main focus. So all the people that did love Gary and that wanted to be a part of VeeFriends um, had the resources so they could actually buy them or mint them. Excuse me.
And I'll take a minor step back. So when you saw the characters, you're obviously a creative. You're a storyteller at heart. Like, did you see it? Like, did it take you long to really see what this was going to be or the potential, or like were you just kind of going along with it and kind of learned as you go from that regard? Like when you first saw like the doodle
Yeah.
patient pig, did all the light bulbs go off for you?
Yeah, I did. So I'll say this. So before VeeFriends, I think it was like 2019. I remember I was in the office. Originally, we had a plan to have 12 of these characters back in 2019 as like these like toy
Workplace
figurines,
warrior.
basically. Yes, yes, that was it. Yeah. And so I knew some of the characters from back then. Patient Pig, I'm pretty sure was one of them. Empathy Elephant, I think was another one. And so yeah, so I saw these characters. It made sense. Someone compared them to Pokemon cards, like in terms of collectibles, like what people are going to do with these. And then it started hitting me. And then I was like, oh, this is interesting because we're launching a brand of these characters that originated as a collectible, like as this collection. And then as I started seeing these characters with Gary's sketches, I knew these weren't going to eventually be like the few like the complete designs. I knew this was like V1, and I was like, that's even cooler because now people eventually down the road as Gary builds out this IP and as the community and as the team builds out this IP, people are going to have this forever. It's like the original, and that hit me really quickly because you can see I like to collect a lot of things,
Yeah,
and so that made sense to me pretty fast. And then it actually became easier to be doing managing the community and managing the content because I understood what what the point of VeeFriend Series One was in terms of collectability.
fascinating. So at some point, you guys obviously you all the education's happening. You need a home, right? So you make your home is the Discord,
Yeah.
which you ultimately run. What it rapidly took off, rapidly took off. It did not.
No, it did. It was insane.
Oh,
Way
okay.
faster than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to me about that because you're walking in there to empty pipes, and now it's lore, it's memories, it's where everything happens. So I mean, talk to me about the origin of the Discord, and I know you are the man responsible for hiring the legend known as Nick Corso.
Yeah.
So
I
I
love
mean,
Corso. It's
There's a lot to this.
There's a lot. So I'll tell you this, dude. We were so looking back, we were so unprepared. It was awful. I would never let that fly now in 2024. But yeah, dude, I'll give you. So I created the Discord. I like built out the skeleton. I like did the whole thing. I showed it to, and there was a meeting one night. I think it was a Wednesday night or a Thursday night. It was definitely one of those. And I remember I showed it to Gary. AJ was on the call. Andy was on the call. There were a few people. I was just showing them a screen share of the Discord. And they were like, cool, looks great. Like, it looks like it has everything we need. Um, and then at one point, I can't remember, but I think Gary was like, I think I told Gary, I'm like, hey, let's launch this like in the morning. Like, let's launch in the daytime. And Gary's like, no, we're gonna launch it now. And by the way, it was like 10 p.m. And I was like, no, we can launch in the morning or something like that. He's like, no, I'm gonna launch it now. He's like, let's just like see or something like that. I can't remember the exact verbiage, but he took the link of the Discord and put it on his Twitter. And my goal, and this is, I'm not speaking as VeeFriends or anyone, it was just my personal goal in the first week was to get like 25,000 members, I think. I was like, if we get 25K, we won. Dude, in the first week, we got 140K. And so but here's the crazy part. So Gary sends out, this is how I remember it. Maybe other people have different versions of it, but Gary put out the link on Twitter. I think it was like 10 p.m. on a Wednesday or Thursday night. Flood of people are joining, but we don't have moderators. So it's just like me, Gary, Andy, different members of the team, and it's 10 p.m. So most members of the team have worked all day, so they're not going to be online for much longer. And so I remember this, dude. I vividly remember I was on my dining room table in Dallas, Texas. It was me, Andy, and Gary, and it was just us moderating in Gen Chat. There's hundreds of thousands of people joining, and we're just responding to every single person. At one point, it was just me and Gary. It was 3 a.m. And that was the first night of the Discord, community managing me and Gary and Andy until like 3 a.m. And then the next morning I woke up, I was like, I need moderators. So that's when it began. That's when I realized what was actually happening. And I started very quickly assembling a team of Navy SEALs that I thought could help be the eyes and ears of the Discord. And one of them, like you mentioned, was Corso, which is a whole story we can talk about. But yeah, it was obviously moderators know this. I said this to them all the time. It's like we would not have been able to do what we did without those moderators holding it down every day, especially
Mm,
during like 2021 when things are really hot.
totally. I mean, it got busy in there once, the tokens were unchained, giveaway season, like there was a lot happening there. A lot happening there.
Yeah.
For there I would love to hear the story of Corso. He is one of the most listened to episodes. He is beloved for all the right reasons. It's no surprise. Um, where did you find Corso? How did you find Corso? I know he was into gaming, but just a quick little aside, because
Yeah.
I mean at that point you said you obviously didn't want to take anybody. They needed to know what they were doing, but you needed people quick.
Yeah, dude, it was exactly. So, Gary, and I know this from working on the Facebook group and other stuff with him in the past, but for VeeFriends, it's like, his biggest thing is like, get people who are skilled, obviously, as much as possible. But number one is like kindness. Like, are they just good people, especially in a role where you are front facing, you are representing the company? Like,
Mm,
it doesn't matter how mean someone's being, like, you gotta have like the same traits Gary would, right? In terms of responding to people, being empathetic, being kind, being understanding. So what I did was, the first night, me, Gary, and Andy, we were up till 3 a.m. responding to people. We knew that wasn't scalable. I think I got like 2 hours of sleep, woke up, and I was like, I need to hire people. And so what I did was we had like a bot, if I recall, that would show me the statistics of the most active members. And so that's where I started. I found a few members that I saw were just like super active compared to others. So I started my search there, found a few good people. Gary made a tweet where a few other people started respond. Like Gary was like, "Hey, like if you're really good at Discord, if you're good at moderation, comment here." And then he I think tagged me, and I started going through that. Hired a few people there. Corsa was one of the more just like really active people that had good vibes. And I remember I asked a few of the first moderators I hired. If I recall, I was like, "Who else should we bring on? Like, I need more people." And like almost everyone unanimously was like, "Corso, like this guy, like he's awesome." And his name just kept coming up. He was very active. I went through his chat, like the history of his replies. He was super nice. He was helping tons of people, if I recall. And yeah, I just reached out to him. I was like, dude, I would love for you to be a part of this. He immediately accepted. What was really cool about Corso, though, was he wasn't just like responding to people. He was go out of his way. He would like move earth in day and night to help people. And I started at one point hosting office hours. And he was one of those lead people who would host. He would for 3 hours, 4 hours straight on the VeeFriends Discord. He would be on stage helping people real time with whatever their issues were with getting an NFT or secondary
Mm.
listing. Like he was up there just himself doing it, and everyone loved him. I was like, man, this guy's awesome, and he was great, man. He was just one of the closest mod. He was one of the mods I was closest with during a very hectic, chaotic time, and he always just kind of kept me chill and just kind of helped me out a lot. So it was really cool to have Corso in those early days.
I love that, and he's still doing it today.
Oh yeah,
He's still doing it today.
he's killing it,
Such a
dude.
great dude, and just an amazing ambassador for the community, the brand, everything.
Yeah.
So one of the kind of underlying things that happened that gets lost, but for historical purposes, like Gary was big on this 5-5 drop. Like May 5th was the target. May 5th was the target. It didn't happen. Um, so many things were happening. ETH was like skyrocketing. Like the the Web3 was just getting bananas. You guys didn't launch to 511. It from the outside, and I've talked to Cam, I've talked to a lot of people about this. Um, was it a huge thing, or was it just like, all right, we shot our shot, like let's just get up and do this right, and if we're just gonna dust it off and get it going on 511.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember. I know it was. I remember if I on my POV, it was very. I don't know if it was. Yeah, it was pretty last minute from what I recall. Like I was ready to go on 5-5. I had my communication stuff ready. Obviously, some tech stuff came up, which it sounds like you talked to the tech folks. I'll say on my end, yeah, it wasn't impacting me necessarily on the comms either. Like I knew how we were going to address it. I could tell Gary is definitely not what he wanted. If you recall his Instagram post and his Twitter post during the time, like I could tell he was definitely um, he was taking accountability for it, but I could tell he was definitely discouraged because we were all planning around that date. But yeah, I'll be honest, I know for me it was like kind of last minute. It was a thing that happened. I was just so focused on the comm side, like making sure people knew there was not going to be a drop on 5-5 and just educating and working with the moderators to address questions. Cause it wasn't just like we would put out a thing that's like, hey, we're not on 5-5. We're going to try to, drop here and then cause we're like, we're going to drop here, I think in the next 24 hours or 48 hours, or we'll keep you posted. And then we decided 511. So there were some multiple beats that I had to communicate to the community outwardly. And then I had to make sure the moderators knew. And then I had to make sure the Q&A, the questions they were getting, I could help them answer. So it's just like focused on comms and making sure all the people in the community who wanted a VeeFriend knew was going to happen on the 11th when we decided that. I just remember being heads down focused on that.
So, obviously it drops. People love it. It's going crazy. It took a couple weeks to finally sell out,
Yeah.
um, ish. But people are happy. People are trading, and this community is getting cultivated. Was the amazing Discord, amazing giveaways, but amazing just generosity. People, collecting ETH dust and buying people NFTs, people gifting NFTs, be, you know, just amazing stuff that I'm really excited to keep on learning about, all these little stories that I missed out. And so many people aren't even forthright about it. Like you really have to dig to get some of these stories
Yeah.
of generosity. But like, was it you being at the helm of it? And I don't know if you like had a chance to like pick your head up and like really look from a bird's eye view, because it sounds like you were in it, but like was it at all any surprise what was building? Did you feel like this just special bond that has been built, or what, because you were just so accustomed to it from being attached to Gary community for years, it was just kind of another day at the office and just in a different home, so to
No, it
speak?
was it was crazy, man. I was really heads down day to day, but then I had a lot of moderators and obviously Corso being super like, the pulse he had. They would send we had a separate chat where they would send me updates all the time. And there were so many stories I was hearing and seeing there, and a lot of those I would also, screenshot and send to Gary. So like I want to make sure he was looped in as well. Because he's so busy too, and he's not just doing VeeFriends, he's doing a million other things. So and so I would then take that and send it to them. But Yeah, dude, I was surprised. I mean that in the nicest way. Like there were people, that were getting scammed because they were new to Web3. They're losing their VeeFriends, which costs thousands of dollars, and you have people in the community like raising money so they could buy a new one or gifting it to them, just
Mm,
from like the goodness of their heart. Because and it was pretty people they've never met, they've never seen, they don't even know anything about them, but they've chatted with them in the Discord, and now they're friends, and so they're doing that out of the goodness of their heart. Yeah, I mean, I was like pleasantly surprised. And back then, remember, like everyone was on Clubhouse, and so I would like join those Clubhouse convos when I could and listen into those and see all the just how close people were getting. It was I knew it was gonna happen to a certain extent, but I was shocked by the depth of it and how quickly it was happening, um, and in the best way. And it was also like I had seen this happen, like you said, with Gary's other communities over the years, like the First Line Facebook group to a certain degree, but it was not like this. This was like another level of depth that was happening, and it was just so cool to see. And what's funny is even a lot, in my opinion, a lot of the stuff we did with Gary's communities in the past, like the First Line Facebook group, it was still very centered around Gary as the main person.
mm,
And even though we were trying to like make it bigger than him, and this was one of those moments I was like, wow, this is actually bigger than Gary. Like it's very Gary focused because that's where these people are coming from. But now when they're in and they're meeting all these other people and they're relating to certain characters and those characteristics, oh, this is so much bigger. Now it's like all about the community as well. And that was really cool to see because we were trying to solve for that over the years, at least while I was on the team. And it was the first time where we're like, man, I think we figured it out. Look what's happening.
amazing. I mean, and it's still there. I mean, there's a lot of nuances of little pockets of people that
Yeah.
are happier or unhappier depending on the announcement or the drop, whatever. But I feel like you're always going to have that. But in the macro, it's still, as Gary said before, a community in a sea of non-communities.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, it's a special place, man. It's so awesome to see even now. Like I still see it on my timeline, and it just makes me happy, man. And I think so much of that's the team, but it's also the OG community members that are hanging out in there. They're still doing what they were doing, and spreading that message through their actions. So it's I think you're right. I think it's still what makes the community so special, even in 2024.
mm, who Speaking of that, like, are there any names that pop off to you? You mentioned OGs, which is a term that gets thrown around, but if we're talking about the Zain era, like you're definite OG. Are there any names that stick out of people that just went community members that went above and beyond, or that you just want to name drop, throw roses to?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, man. I think
I know it's an
it's
unfair question because there are
no,
so many, but
no, it's true, and there's so many. Most of them, a lot of them, not all, but like a good chunk of them, I was like trying to bring on as moderators, or brought on as moderators. I think, I mean, a few that come to mind. One was Sal. If Guardia. I'm gonna
Sal
make.
DiGuardia, yeah.
Okay, I was like, I'm close. I can feel it. Yeah, he was awesome, man. He obviously just like active and great, person. But also, I remember during this when the Discord was popping off, I remember I was like, I can't remember about an issue. It was like a really random issue, and and I just like ran out of the blue. I just saw him on Discord. I hit him up, and he immediately like the next day we hopped on a call, and he just kind of went above and beyond to help me out. And he didn't ask for anything. He wasn't expecting anything. He was just really helpful. So he stands out. There's a ton of people, man. I can't remember many names to be honest off the top of my head, but they all kind of blend together. Like that whole time
Yeah.
kind of blends together. I will say when I went to VCon last year, where I met you as well, it was so cool to see all those like OG people in the flesh and like talk about so many experiences that I just completely forgotten about because it was there was so much happening during that time. But yeah, man, it's an awesome community. I think a lot of the moderators too, like Corso, we've talked about. Kashfi was really, really helpful because she was in a very different time zone. So like when I was going to sleep, maybe, or when I was getting ready for bed, like she was online, she was helping everyone, she was holding it down. Burge, uh, he was awesome. He had a ton of like engagement hacks. So whenever like the Discord got quiet for a second, Burge would get on there and say something that would get a ton of people to start commenting, which was really cool. Legend was really, really impactful in those early days. In particular, like he was organizing a lot of really really cool initiatives whenever someone got scammed, or like whenever someone gave their seed phrase to someone because they're new to Web3, like he would jump in there and help them out. Yeah, a lot of really cool people from back then, man. It was a special time for sure.
Amazing. And again, just to tie the bow on this era, like you know, everything stems from the top, obviously Gary, but like from a community standpoint, you being the first person to kind of like just say this is how it's going to be. I don't know if there's a handbook or just leading by example. Like kudos to you because it is a very different place, and I've been in my fair share of discords, and it's just different.
Thanks, man.
It's just different.
I appreciate it. It's like, definitely like, yeah, I get the credit, but honestly, like all hats off to the moderators and the most active community members. Cause like, I would spend a lot of my time putting out other fires. And I was also running media at the time. And so I was running socials. I was coming up with
Mm,
content. So, my attention wasn't in the Discord every second of every day like the moderators were. And, I got to say the moderators and just the active community members are what made it so special because ultimately they created the culture. They decided day to day what we were going to tolerate, what we were not going to tolerate, what we were going to talk about, what we were going to promote. And so, shout out to them. They seriously, I could not have done what I did without them.
amazing. And yes, I will echo that to the nth degree. Uh, August 13th, 2021, you write a fantastic thread, starting with today's my final day working for Gary V. Fantastic thread. I'm not going to read all of it, but I'll pin it up when it makes sense. You move on. You start your own project, Chippy's World. Just I'm not going to put you on the spot, but
Yeah.
was there any reason in particular that you walked away?
Yeah, I mean, there were a few, dude. It was obviously seriously a tough decision. But to be frank, I think there were a couple things. One, I was just burnt out. I was so,
Mm,
I think, and by the way, I don't, it's funny, like when I look back now, obviously now that it's been a couple years, you've had some time, there was a lot I could have done to be not burnt out. Like, I'm one thing that I'm always working on even now is I'm horrible at asking for help. And so whether it's work or personal life. So, if anything's happening where I am doing more than I should, or I'm just encountering a problem, I usually am the type of person that says, I'm going to figure this out. I'm not going to ask for help. And so that's what happened at VeeFriends or media, community during the bull market. It, it kept falling on me. And instead of asking for help and trying to mitigate that, I just kind of took on more. And then at one point I was like, oh my God, I am not getting enough sleep. I'm burnt out. I need to go take care of that. So that was number one. And again, I could have mitigated that. And then two, I just had some other opportunities. It's funny. I actually, when I left VeeFriends, I left to join a startup, which ended up not working out. So I actually joined the startup like I think the next week in August, and then I was only there for 2 months because I joined. It was one of those, like there's a couple Gary videos where he's like, people join. There's some people that join companies and they stay an extra year or two, even though they know week two they're not supposed to be there. That was me with the
mm,
startup. I joined, and like week two, I was like, dude, this is not the place for me. I ended up leaving 2 months later. And then I did some like freelance consulting work for like places like Rarible for a little bit and some other places. Then I started Chippy's World, which was a big part of 2022. And then in 2023, I did join Cool Cats, and now I'm in my current job. But that was really it. As is burnout, which I could have mitigated, and just other interesting opportunities that just sounded. It was different. It was a platform that we were going to build, and so I was like, I think it's just interesting to try something new, given all my experiences here. And it was just more like, what's the worst that can happen, right? And that's kind of what made me do it.
mm. Interesting. Um, and it is funny how you need that time to reflect to be like, oh, this is why I
Yeah,
did this. Um,
yeah,
so you Chippy's World was that, and you kind of have this through line. You said you were always doodling. Was that kind of always in you, and you finally had a moment, and you like wanted to, obviously like crazy. Like I feel everyone like if you weren't starting your own project, like who are you in 2021?
yeah, yeah.
Like what was the precipice for that?
Yeah, so it's funny. Chippy is before I got into Web3. So during COVID, actually, was it 2020? I started, because I was at home a lot like everyone else. After work, instead of like commuting back home and stuff, now that I'm at home, I started drawing. So I actually bought a drawing tablet, during COVID, and I would draw every night after work. And eventually, I would host like Instagram shows where people would tune in and watch me draw. I would take requests. I would bring them on screen. And that was like every Friday, and it was just really fun. It was a special time where you could do that now with world being back to normal. Kind of like you don't do that anymore. But I would pick up drawing, and during this time where I'm picking up drawing on these in this drawing tablet, I created a series where I was trapped in my New York City apartment with a bunch of imaginary monsters. And one of those monsters was this red one named Chippy. And as soon as I posted Chippy, the reaction he got compared to all the other monsters was like tenfold. And I could tell there was something here with this character that kind of clicked with people. And so I started just drawing Chippy all during COVID, where he would be in my kitchen, he would be on my couch, he would I'd have dinner with him, and I would just post these images of me and Chippy, and people got to know him through that. And so in 2022, I just had an itch. I was like, man, I think I should make a collection around Chippy, because a lot of people who know me, which I don't have a big following, but the people who know me know Chippy, and I just think it'd be fun as a way. I thought it'd be a fun way for me to put out a collection and kind of get into it a little bit. So that's how Chippy's World came about. It's just 2,500 of these NFTs of Chippy, or different types of chippies, and it all originated from COVID and drawing during COVID.
I didn't realize that. That's fascinating. And Chippy Chippy and Chippy's World had a huge cult following. Still does. There a lot of overlap from the VeeFam, from VeeFriends to that. I for and this is for the people that are really deep. I'm a cozy sock holder. Uh,
Yeah, dude, you're legit then. Yeah, cozy socks, man.
I don't know what the quantity is there, but I know it's not as big as 2,500.
No, that was, yeah, for anyone listening. Yeah, cozy socks was, I was looking for a reason to dabble in Manifold. And so I had this idea where I had an open edition with this doodle of a sock. It was just like a black and white drawing of a sock. And if you bought it, you paid $1. Like you got to mint it for $1, but I didn't tell you what would happen. And so, it seems like you minted it. And then I came out with a bunch of other socks of different designs, of different traits and things, where depending on the number of cozy socks you had, you could burn to redeem these other rarer socks. Just as like a fun experiment. Again, there was $1 per mint, so it wasn't anything
Yeah.
too crazy, just to cover the cost. But it was just a fun experiment. It was cool to see like which socks people resonated with, and there was like a legendary sock that you could burn, I think, 8 cozy socks for. So it was just like a really fun experiment for me to like get to know Manifold more, and also like it was $1, so like I didn't feel like it did barely cover the expenses, but it was just like a fun experiment. And yeah, it was cool, man. I definitely want to do more stuff like that. Like I've been so busy right now with Claynosaurs and other stuff on that front that I just haven't had a chance to like do my own creative stuff as much recently, which is totally fine. It's just life kind of moves in phases, obviously with Chippy as well. Like there's so much more I want to do there, but I just can't right now. But the moment I get a chance to breathe, like that's what I want to do. I want to do something more creative again, whether it's
Right.
Chippy, whether it's another cozy sock deal that's really random. Like I just want to be creative on my personal side again, for my personal content.
I totally get it. Zane, before we get to our last quick segment, a couple more questions. We've talked.
Yeah.
Community has been the through line of the conversation. It's been part of the majority of your professional career. What does that word even mean to you? Community.
Yeah. Um, community to me is people that, to me, community is people that come together and support one another for, and have um, something in common. Maybe it should be reversed, but yeah, that's how I think about it. It's people that come together and support one another.
And you've you know maybe not recently, but you've spent a lot of time with VeeFriends, gotten to know the characters. What VeeFriend do you think you need to spend more time with right now?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm gonna go with there's two or three that are coming to my mind, but I'll go with accountability ant. I feel like there's just so much happening right now, both professionally, both in my personal life, and it's something that with accountability in particular, I'm just working on. And also, I don't know which characteristic this, you might know this better than me, but I think I mentioned earlier, I'm really bad at asking for help, and so I don't know if there's one that falls into that. But whatever that character is, that's probably one I need
Yeah,
a lot too.
what would that be?
I feel like
Because
I need
I'm with
to.
that. I'm with that too. I'm terrible at asking for anything. I'm right with you. That's a good one. I need to really do my research on that.
Yeah.
Great answer though. Fantastic. Real quick before our last segment, I just want to thank you again. Like so grateful. Like in my little like nerdy list, I have ambitions with this documenting this journey, this brand, this project. I have a book planning that I'm slowly doing, and you're such a big pillar, and I really appreciate you coming on and kind of reliving that era of your life. So shout out to you. People that when your name comes up, like it's one of those like you find out like where people are in their VeeFriends, like what kind of membership card they have, based on how they if they know Zain or not.
That's
So
awesome.
appreciate you really jamming, bud. And
Yeah,
hope to
dude.
see you at VCon again if you make it out there. So for this last segment, I call it micro macro Spitfire. So I'm going to fire a bunch of questions. You can answer them really quick, yes, no, one word in the macro, or get your microscope out and elaborate. So here we go. A secret talent you have that most people don't know.
Oh, I can move all my fingers all the way back.
Oh, oh, there you go. Yes, you can.
Easy.
If if there was a law where you had to get rid of all of your social media platforms and you could only keep one, which would you keep?
Twitter right now.
Your favorite IP growing up as a kid?
Um, Favorite IP. There's too many coming to mind. I'm gonna go with Pokemon
Favorite movie?
of all time. Okay. Um, let's go with John Wick. I'm debating one or two. I'm gonna go with one.
Gary, when you wrote that thread saying goodbye to your VeeFriends position, Gary asked for your Kind Warrior Go back. Did you give it to him?
I did not give it back to Gary.
Is Kind Warrior your favorite VeeFriend?
Yeah, Kind Warrior is number one because that's the V friend that I got. That was my first V friend, but it's a really close tie. After Kind Warrior, like right behind, it's the Creative Craft.
Flip Life, yes or no for you?
No, never got really into it.
Most underrated funny person on the VeeFriends team?
May.
Or oh, we could go Vayner.
Oh, Vayner.
Anyone?
May.
Vayner or VeeFriends?
I would go with
May?
May. I spent a lot of time with May, and May's just a really funny, quirky person. But the more you get to know her,
Bougie hotel or hiking and camping in the woods?
bougie hotel,
Wine, beer, or coffee?
coffee every day.
Favorite concert you've ever been to?
I haven't been to too many concerts. I saw. I can't remember the last concert I went to. I'm gonna have to pass. I can't. I literally can't think of one. I don't do a lot of like live music.
What is your favorite piece of physical VeeFriends or Gary Vayner memorabilia?
Ooh, I don't have them. They're like in the front in the other room, but the original Clouds and Dirt K Swiss sneakers.
Oh, number one.
Yeah, yeah, the white ones with the stripes.
Nice. Paper Hands Pony or the koala?
Koala,
Patient Pig or Gratitude Gorilla?
patient pig.
Which VeeFriend needs to be voted in the White House this year in 2024?
I mean, obviously, I'm a little biased, but I gotta go with Creative Crab. You know, I mentioned that's one of my favorites. I think having something at the top or someone at the top, excuse me, that's extra creative right now and can figure this out in a really creative way, all the different things going on is needed. So I would go with that.
And for these next two, you have a very, very unique position because you've spent so much time with him. Would you rather have a 2 hour group dinner experience with Gary, you and let's say 8 or 9 friends, or a 10 minute one on one?
10-minute one-on-one.
And if well, I'll let you answer either. I'll give you an option. If you could ask Gary one question, what would it be? Or what is the best question you've ever heard someone ask Gary? Because you probably have heard a lot.
I think, yeah, I'd go with the second one, and I just remember it hit a certain way when I heard it at a live Q&A when I worked for Gary. But someone asked Gary, "Is how do I have all these different choices? How do I make the right choice?" Yeah, that's a really common one, but the way he answered this one in particular just stuck. It just stuck out to me, and obviously the answer is always like you don't know. You just have to pick and see what happens. But yeah, that one really stuck out to me, especially right now because I feel like right now I have so many different things happening that I keep finding myself making sure I'm making the right choice. And Gary's voice pops up. I was like, oh yeah, I just got to make a choice and see what happens.
I love that. I love that. Zane, really appreciate you, man. So good to jam finally. One of my favorite things is just of doing this whole podcast is just kind of marking out time just to jam with people. And this is super fun. Really appreciate you. Really, I think I speak for all of us. We're watching you and rooting for you. Um, yeah,
Thank
and
you, dude.
hope you can.
No, I appreciate it so much, man. It's always fun to have an opportunity to kind of revisit some of those be friends and Team Gary days. So I appreciate you letting me come up here and revisit those with you.
Anytime, anytime. All right, take care, brother.
See ya. Bye.